So, I have never been a huge fan of the sci-fi or supernatural genre, but for some reason during my early teen years, I got really into Buffy the Vampire Slayer and the Vampire Diaries. Vampire Diaries came first for sure. It was the first show that actually got me interested in vampires and other movies and shows that involve these sexy, blood-sucking creatures. My journey with TVD is kind of strange because I didn't really know about it when it came out, but when I was in middle school, I was obsessed with teen magazines. So I would see posters for the show and interviews with the actors and whatnot. Even then, I don't remember ever really feeling the urge to seek out the show. See, at the time, I was still slowly growing out of kids shows that I would watch on the Disney Channel and Cartoon Network and Nickelodeon. So I hadn't moved over to the big kid channels yet. But one night I happened to catch an episode of the show on the CW. It was the premiere of the season 2 episode, The Last Dance. The fact that I remember that is so weird. I obviously had no idea what was even going on. I remember seeing Bonnie do all this witchy shit, and then Elena banging on the door, and then Bonnie dying. And then I think I remember being mad that they killed the black character. But then she came back, and I was like, oh, okay, what's this show about? So one day at good old Wally Mart, my mom and I were strolling through the entertainment section. She had just gotten her taxes, I think, and so when I saw the first season of the Vampire Diaries on the shelf, I begged her to buy it for me, and she did. That night I went home and I binged the shit out of this show, and my life was never the same. I was obsessed with the show, and because I was late to the game, I had to play catch up. So I got seasons 2 and 3 when they were released and binged those as well. Now, even though in retrospect, Vampire Diaries ages very poorly, it was objectively, at least in the first 3 seasons, a well-written drama. Like, my mom doesn't even watch shit like this, and I had her watching it. My sister got into it, my mom's boyfriend at the time got into it. Like, it was an engaging and suspenseful show that always kept you on your toes. The cliffhangers were incredible. The show centers around a girl named Elena Gilbert from the fictional town of Mystic Falls, Virginia. The story opens with the couple being murdered by an unknown creature. And then we cut to hearing Stefan and Elena's diary entries.
Dear Diary, today will be different. It has to be. I will smile, and it will be believable.
She has just lost both of her parents in a tragic accident. An accident that she was involved in but survived. Elena has a little brother named Jeremy, and they are both taken in by their aunt Jenna. On their first day back at school, Elena meets a man named Stefan Salvatore, who, unbeknownst to her, has just returned to his hometown. He would eventually become her boyfriend, except Stefan has a little secret.
I'm a vampire.
Not only is he a vampire, he also has a big brother named Damon, who also has returned to stir up trouble. This poses an issue for Stefan, who planned to come back to Mystic Falls to live a normal life, and to get to know Elena, who is a dead ringer for Catherine, the woman who turned him and his brother.
I've been 17 years old since 1864.
Once Elena decides that she can handle Stefan and his vampiric ways, her life turns upside down. Throughout the series, we meet Caroline and Bonnie, Elena's lifelong BFFs, and Matt and Tyler, Elena's ex-boyfriend and his best friend, who are on the football team. They would all become involved in the endless life-threatening events that quickly become a mainstay in their lives. Most importantly, the show is about a woman stuck between 2 men.
What's a girl to do when she's stuck between men? It's like she's a Barbie with 2 perfect kins.
Despite never being a vampire fan before, I was really into these vampires. Not just because they were sexy, but because at the time I found the show's interpretation of vampires more exciting than other interpretations of the past. In Buffy, if you were a vampire, your face would completely alter into something monstrous. You can live forever, but you still have to stay out of the sun, and for the most part, you have the same abilities as other humans. In Vampire Diaries, you become stronger, you can move super fast, you can eavesdrop on people without being awkward, you can leap onto buildings, you can compel people, which I now realize is high-key creepy, but at the time, that seemed really cool. Also, if you had a black witch friend, she could make you a daylight ring so you can walk in the sun. Who wouldn't want to be a vampire in this universe? Because if you've seen the show, being a human in Mystic Falls is a bad life decision. I was also, of course, really into Elena, Stefan, and Damon. Now, an important thing to note, because it is pertinent to my perception of the show, is that as mentioned before, I was late to the game, and I also wasn't on social media at all. So I was not aware of the discourse surrounding the show. I didn't know how people actually felt about the characters or anything. When I started watching the show, I was always a Stefan fan and rooted for him and Elena. Now, because I was completely out of the loop, I was not aware of the fact that people actually wanted Damon and Elena together. So imagine my 14-year-old shock when the show started hinting at Damon and Elena getting together. I was genuinely confused because to me, it just didn't compute. The Elena I knew would never go for Damon. I thought the writers thought like me. I thought they also agreed that Damon was a disgusting creep, and Elena falling in love with him would completely go against everything that she stands for. But no. I was wrong. The writers were not thinking on my level at all, and I quickly realized that many fans of the show weren't either. That is when I really started to understand that people can have completely different perceptions of something, even when you think it is so obvious that something isn't right. However, the way I viewed the characters at the time and why I ended up having a weird love-hate relationship with the show has evolved over the years. See, at first, I just thought it was weird for someone to sleep with one brother and then fuck the other one. That was how far my criticism went. I had so much moral hang-up over a woman going between two brothers. It just seemed icky to me. And I wasn't alone. While many of the show's fans seemed to be Team Delena, there were still a lot of people who disliked their relationship and had issues with Elena's character. But some of their criticisms only went as far as mine did. And looking back, I do feel that these criticisms traffic in a little bit of slut-shaming. Elena never actually, cheated on Stefan. She kissed Damon goodbye while he was dying, but, the problem isn't that Elena cheated, it's that she kissed this old man when she was 17. While I do still have some reservations about someone going between siblings, I think people are allowed to do what they want, and dating your ex's brother, while maybe gross to some, is not the worst thing in the world, Because the people felt way too comfortable calling Elena a slut or a hoe while not calling Damon a damn thing when he also spends 3 seasons trying to move in on his brother's girlfriend. He's trifling for that too.
In a comment we got on the YouTube last week, it was Sigana says, I think Elena is a nasty bee for the simple fact that she slept with both brothers, and for me, that is just nasty. I could have found someone not related, not doing exactly what Catherine did. Damon has no redeeming qualities at all. Granted, he's hot, but that's about it.
But then they both were sleeping with the same woman knowingly back in 1864, so I don't know, y'all. These brothers are kind of weird. It was just not a totally fair criticism, and so I had to really check myself on that one. And I think we should all do that when it comes to female characters in particular. Female characters in TV shows almost always face the most intense criticism from fans. Even when people have some valid points, it's almost like people supercharge all of their hatred towards them and overlook other characters who also display very toxic traits and lack character development. Like Damon. That's not to say that hating a female character instantly makes you sexist, because guess what? I still don't like Elena. So I'm not saying that it makes you sexist. I just think when we criticize female characters, let's just be aware of what it is exactly about them that makes us tick. Because I do think there are very valid reasons to dislike Elena as a character. Slut-shaming is just not something I will ever consider to be valid criticism, so I can't co-sign that. If you are a longtime fan of the show and you were on the internet at the time the show was airing, you probably understand how intense TVD fans are about these characters. The Delena versus Delena debates felt as serious to us as political debates were to our parents. People took this shit seriously. People would get into heated debates about why Delena sucked, or why Delena sucked, or why Delena was better, or why Selena was better actually, and why it was endgame. To me, it always felt like a majority of fans were into Delena. Now, I don't know if that's one of those things where they were just the loudest or what, but I also used to listen to the AfterBuzz podcast when they reviewed this show, and yeah, everyone on the show except 2 hosts, I believe, were Team Delena. So I always felt outnumbered. Now, before we go any further, I want to be clear that this is just a TV show. So, I am not trying to make fun of anyone for being a fan of either ship. I'm also not going to shit on anyone who truly likes Elena as a character and feels she is a good person. I personally always had a hard time liking her after a certain point in the show, but I had to understand that the things about her that bothered me just didn't bother some people. I'm not here to tell anyone how to feel about anything. What's important to recognize, though, is our own bias. I mentioned before that I was always a fan of Stefan and really rooted for him and Elena to end up together. So that, of course, had a huge impact on why my view of Elena began to sour when she started moving over to Damon. That was frustrating because I felt like she was breaking Stefan's heart. So, of course, I would begin to become irritated with her. I noticed that many of the people who love Elena are also Delena fans. And I suspect a big part of that for some of them is because she chose the man that they wanted her to choose. Regardless of whether Delena fans think their relationship is toxic, that's what they wanted and that's what they got. It doesn't help for Delena fans either that the writers were extremely pro-Delena and basically said, I believe around season 6, that Elena and Stefan were never getting back together. That can cause some irritation amongst fans who wanted #Delena forever. I am saying this to say that we all have bias and we should just be honest about that.
You have no remorse. You broke that boy's heart. You let him drown in a lake for 3 months.
Okay, yeah, but she let him drown in a lake. That's a little intense to say that.
It's important to bring this up because now that I'm older, I no longer view this simply in terms of Delena versus Delena. I still think Paul Wesley and Nina Dobrev had pretty good chemistry and had some nice moments. But you know, Stefan was also kind of creepy and weird.
When I pulled you out, I looked at your face and you looked like Catherine. I couldn't believe the resemblance. After that, I spent months making sure that you weren't her. I watched you. I learned everything that I could about you.
You what?
But I always personally felt he had slightly better character development than Damon, who didn't really have any in my opinion. And I actually kind of liked his arc during season 3. He, in my opinion, outshone Damon, who admittedly was previously very good at being an anti-hero and being charismatic and likable. However, Damon's charisma never won me over that much. I couldn't look past how he treated Caroline, how he almost murdered Bonnie, and then, like the Damon we all know and love, had the audacity to try to call a truce and treat the whole thing as if they had gotten into a fender bender. To me, it was so obvious that he was terrible, especially to her best friends. How could Elena overlook that? What really did it for me was in the first episode of season 2. So for context, at the end of season 1, Damon and Elena kissed for the first time. Except it wasn't Elena, it was her doppelganger, Catherine. Damon learns this to his dismay, and when he talks to Elena about this, she tells him,
"Why is it such a surprise that I would kiss you?"
I'm surprised that you thought I'd kiss you back.
Towards the end of the episode, Catherine shows up at the Salvatore residence. At this point, Damon has been drinking. They make out and have angry foreplay before Damon professes his love for Catherine. And she coldly breaks the news to him that
I've never left you. It was always Stefan.
Damon later shows up unannounced in Elena's bedroom. Drunk and feeling sorry for himself, he tries to guilt Elena into admitting that she has feelings for him. He forces her to kiss him, grabs her, and tries to make her kiss him again.
No, Damon, I care about you. Listen to me, I care about you. I love Stefan. It's always gonna be Stefan.
Jeremy interrupts, concerned for his sister's safety, and Damon, pissed off and jealous, takes his anger out on Jeremy by snapping his neck.
All you have to do is flip the switch and
I was like, oh, this is it. She is done with his ass. It's over for Damon. But it wasn't. Obviously, I was, again, truly baffled. And it felt like as the episodes went on, Damon's behavior would get worse and worse. And I would begin to find Elena's constant forgiveness of him to frustrate me to no end. Now my hatred of Delena had morphed into a deeper hatred for this lead female character, whom I was still being told was this compassionate and amazing person that everyone in Mystic Falls loves. And when I say love, I mean they love Elena. Everyone's always sacrificing themselves for her and would choose her over their own blood or themselves. It became so predictable and repetitive that it ended up causing more polarization amongst the fan base. I found forums and some Reddit posts that centered around this "Does Elena suck?" debate. So many of these posts start off with the OP asking the fans to keep things civilized because that is how serious this shit is to people. And me, I am people. Before we actually rip into Elena, I want to address some of the posts I saw that defended Elena. I want to preface this by saying, please be respectful in our posts on this subject. Feelings are high, and I know that. But I want to understand why some people seem to be angry with Elena for seemingly moving on from Stefan and kissing Damon. All of her recent statements have been that Stefan is her past now. Like, we'll have to let him go. Stefan isn't the Stefan we knew anymore. That sounds like a Klaus and Stefan problem. All of this unrelated to the kiss. She had already decided it was in the past, so given that and following facts, How can people be angry at her? Because we always knew it was a love triangle right from the beginning of the show, so it would be inevitable they'd explore DE. This has been building slowly between Damon and Elena. 2.5 years of build-up is pretty darn slow. Stefan has told Elena more than once that he didn't want to be with her anymore. Elena is now single due to that and still wanted the entire summer plus the beginning of the school year to begin to move on from Stefan. And she spent her summer looking for him only to be told by him to get lost. So now she's gotten lost. Why does that make her a bad person? I want to understand the anger I have seen toward her. I do get it in a way. She has frustrated me in the past, but in the opposite direction. When you look at the facts, I don't see how she could have done anything more. How long is she supposed to wait? They dated 1 school year. Now they've been apart at least 3 months. What is it about her actions that makes you angry, and why do you think she owes Stefan anything more now? I will add my feelings later after I hear from some of you. Let's make this a healthy and hopefully healing debate where we can come to an understanding about the true situation Elena is in. Now, this person does make some good points here. Again, for context, at the end of season 2, Damon was dying because of a werewolf bite, and Stefan got info from Bonnie that he would need to go to Klaus for a cure. If you don't know who Klaus is, in short, he's an original vampire / werewolf, and he has like special blood or whatever, and so Stefan needs his blood to save Damon. But Klaus is not one to give shit away for free, so he forces Stefan to make a deal with him.
Leave town with me and save your brother's life.
So Stefan does just that. He leaves his life behind with Elena to save his brother. Klaus succeeds in turning Stefan, who before only drank animal blood and struggles with human blood addiction, back into the Ripper he once was. When he comes back to Mystic Falls, he is not the kind, caring, and compassionate Stefan we knew before.
I can't give up on you, Stefan.
Yes, you can. It's done. That part of my life is done. I don't want to see you. I don't want to be with you. I just want you to go.
This drives a further wedge between Elena and Stefan, which causes her to find comfort in Damon, who has softened up due to his newfound love for her. Now, I think Stefan unfortunately was put in a very unfair situation where he really just wanted to save his brother's life because he felt he owed him for forcing him to turn back in 1864. But this person is right. While Stefan didn't really want to do any of these things and his life was essentially stolen by Klaus, that's not Elena's fault, and I don't think it makes her a bad person for wanting to move on from him due to the way he treated her in season 3. And listen, he did some fucked up shit.
What are you doing? Stefan, let me out of this car. Do you hear me? Let me out of the car.
Your hybrids to get out of town, Klaus.
Well, that's not going to happen until I get my coffins back.
Okay. Well, then I'm going to drive your blood source off Wickery Bridge.
I just found my blood.
No more hybrids if she's a vampire.
Stefan, slow down! How could you? My parents died going over this bridge. I almost died.
I haven't really seen any Elena hate, to be honest. Maybe I visit the right websites. I've only heard about it, but I mean, I don't get it either. I don't know what else she was supposed to do. She had literally done everything in her limited means to help Stefan and to salvage whatever was left of their relationship, and that's really more than I can say for Stefan. He's done nothing but disregard her in their relationship. We still don't know why he's done that. Perhaps that will be revealed later on, but really, it doesn't change the fact that he did. I don't understand how anyone could be upset at Elena for moving on and saying screw Stefan after all the crap she's endured from him this season. And up until episode 9, she fought for him in their relationship despite his obvious lack of regard for her. In my opinion, Elena would be truly pathetic if she kept pining after Stefan in their relationship when he can't be bothered to fight for it. I think it was one thing to hold out hope when he was under Klaus's control, but now he has his free will and he's put revenge and basically everything else before her, and that's just unacceptable. In this situation, to me, it seems like Stefan is the one who made all the questionable decisions, and yet Elena's getting the hate. I always say this whether people ship SE or DE. Whenever something goes wrong in any of these relationships, some tend to ignore the Salvatore's wrongs and heap all of the hate on Elena, no matter what the circumstances are. Yeah, that's true. We did seem to target more of our hate towards Elena. It's also true that Elena did try to help Stefan in season 3, even when she was starting to have feelings for Damon. But Elena is not responsible for Stefan's well-being. Also, she was literally a teenager. Making her responsible for helping a 100-year-old vampire deal with his human blood addiction is not fair to her at all. This same person also made a point about her relationship with Rebecca, who was Stefan's ex and is Klaus's little sister. I guess people took issue with Elena pretending to be Rebecca's friend, only to literally stab her in the back.
I'm so sorry.
But like this person said, Rebecca was not exactly friendly to her upon their first meeting.
Has my necklace. Look.
Well, more lies.
Where is it?
I don't have it anymore.
You're lying.
So I don't think Elena owes her kindness or respect. Like, I loved Rebecca too, but one thing I noticed about the TVD fandom is that they have certain characters whom they put on a pedestal and feel that no character is allowed to wrong them, even when they wrong others. On Reddit, there was a post asking to have a talk about Elena. The OP described Elena as their comfort character. Some people in the comments agreed with that sentiment, saying she was compassionate, which is a common word Elena fans use when they talk about her, and is also repeated in the show way too many times. I noticed some people say they especially enjoyed her as a vampire, which I have always found interesting. Someone else commented that while they agreed some of the criticisms of her were valid, they found it really annoying when people would drag her while fawning over other characters who hurt her, which is basically what I was saying before, and I agree. Some of these comments even bring up the inherent misogyny that sometimes exists in arguments that berate her. While I agree with some of the points some of these people make, I can't help but notice a trend. In a lot of these defenses, they express a lot of hatred and frustration with Stefan. It seems a large part of their defense of Elena comes from the fact that they feel Stefan treated her like shit and feel he is no longer worthy of her love or respect. Again, I don't disagree, but what's weird is that this doesn't seem to translate to her relationship with Damon. If Stefan isn't worthy of her, why is Damon? Now, in the past, I have often come across comments from people who say that we shouldn't take the show so seriously and that shipping a toxic relationship in a show is not that big of a deal. And no, it's not the biggest deal in the world, but I wouldn't say it's not a big deal. Now, I'm not shaming these forum posters from 2012. That's ridiculous. But it's one thing if you enjoy watching a messy relationship that involves a lot of steamy sex scenes. It's another thing to not be aware that said relationship is messy. Because I don't disagree that Stefan was also an old creep trying to date a teenager. I agree that he and Elena were boring at times. Their relationship was only interesting because of Damon's threatening presence. Even if they displayed a somewhat more healthy relationship dynamic, I can understand being more into the sexy bad guy with the blue eyes and the dark, messy hair. So my problem isn't really with these posters, it's with the writers. From the beginning of the show, Elena has always been written as an AGP, a good person. We are constantly reminded of her compassion and her honesty and her warmness from other characters. Elena was the it girl. She was on the cheerleading team before her parents died, and she was also extremely popular. Elena was the type of girl you bring home to your parents, I guess. She wasn't slutty like Caroline. She also wasn't shallow or insecure like Caroline was, or superficial. So Caroline initially harbors jealousy towards Elena because she feels guys always pick her first.
Why didn't he go for me? You know, how come the guys that I want never want me?
I'm not touching that.
I'm inappropriate. Always say the wrong thing. And Elena always says the right thing.
Throughout the first half of season 1, we learn that honesty is really important to Elena. She doesn't like there to be any secrets in a relationship.
But she's big on trust. So whatever you're holding back from her, the more you try to hide it, the more she won't stop till she figures it out.
From the start, Elena is written to be morally good. She has issues such as still suffering from grief and then also having to deal with the weight of her loved ones dying due to supernatural causes. But besides that, she has always been presented as an ideal woman. As Friendly Space Ninja pointed out in his review of the show, she is a character who never changes or grows. Which is true, but once you realize that and you rewatch the show, it feels like the writers didn't want her to change or grow because they clearly didn't think she needed to. She is already perfect and virtuous, and so everyone should not only want to date her, but they should also want to die for her. A more enraging way the show tries to force the idea of Elena being a good person whom we should have sympathy for is by maintaining her spot in the right position. As in, she can never be wrong about anything. Even when she does something that even she will admit is somewhat wrong, the story makes sure we direct our empathy and concern towards her. For example, in season 1, Vicky, Matt's older sister, was brutally attacked on multiple occasions by Damon. Jeremy and Vicky used to sleep together, but then she started dating Tyler, and there was like this hostile love triangle in the first 5 episodes. Anyway, Damon thought after almost killing her at least 3 times that it'd be fun to turn her into a vampire. Turning her turned out to be a complete fucking disaster. Stefan tried to help her in his own way, but Damon kept interfering because he doesn't really like Stefan's animal blood approach. Elena tries to keep Vicky away from Jeremy, but fails to when, while making out by a bus at a Halloween party, Vicky bites his lip, and when he starts bleeding, she almost eats him for dinner. When Vicky goes to kill Elena, Stefan stabs her through the heart with a giant piece of wood. Elena fears this will further traumatize Jeremy, who has been on a downward path since his parents' death. She asks Stefan to make him forget. Damon takes the offer since due to his human blood diet, it has stronger compelling abilities, I guess. Damon doing this ultimately leads to Jeremy turning his life back around. He starts to care about school again, and Elena and Jenna are shocked to see him studying. He starts going to the library and gets really into a history project Alaric gave him to catch up on his grades. And that leads into a whole other thing. So because this resulted in Jeremy's suffering coming to an end.
Elena, I took away his suffering.
Damon and Elena deciding to up his memory is seen as a net positive. But when Jeremy finds out about this, albeit by snooping in her room and reading her journal, which isn't okay.
And saving the speech about invasion of privacy, because I read a section about Damon erasing my memory about what happened to Vicky.
He is rightfully pissed the fuck off.
So just tell me, what can I do?
You can go to hell, Elena.
But no one can ever be mean to precious Elena. So Damon, who has now fallen in love with Elena, mocks him for acting like an angsty teenager and then gets physical with him when Jeremy doesn't capitulate. Stefan steps in to speak on behalf of Damon like he always does.
What my brother is trying to say is...
No, what your brother meant to say was what he said. Stop trying to speak for him all the time so he can seem like less of an asshole. There is one last scene between Jeremy and Damon where Damon does apologize for what he did to Vicky. Jeremy tells him that making him forget didn't really take away the pain. So I appreciate that this plot line ends with Jeremy telling them that while you had good intentions, your intentions didn't really lead to my suffering completely disappearing. I don't think Elena was being evil when she told Damon to erase Jeremy's memories. I do believe her when she says,
The night that Vicky died, it was like Mom and Dad died all over again. I just wanted to take away your pain. I'm so sorry.
I can empathize with both of them, and you could argue that the show was doing that intentionally or not. What we can't argue is whether Elena actually learned from this experience.
Jeremy's gonna be leaving town for a while.
Jeremy would just leave you to deal with Klaus on your own?
I asked Damon to compel him.
So not even 2 whole seasons later, and Elena does the exact thing that almost ruined her relationship with her brother the first time. This time, this doesn't result in Jeremy finding out and calling out his sister. Bonnie calls her out on it.
For a break, you can't control what everyone does all the time.
Really wrong that you compelled Jeremy to leave town.
I'm doing it to protect him, Bonnie.
He should be able to choose how he wants to live it. You're taking his choices away.
And while she is right, and I love her for this, Jeremy never finds out, and Elena once again can rest assured that she did the right thing. Some Elena fans may agree that she did. But this didn't lead to Jeremy leaving the show. He comes back a few episodes later after Cole, Klaus's brother, finds his location. So all of that just for him to come back and be right back in the bullshit. If the writers were smart, this could have been an actual relationship arc between the two of them, where Elena keeps making decisions for her brother, thinking she has his best interest in mind, and her having to learn that she cannot just have people enter his mind and take away his choices, like Bonnie said. Elena is always expressing her own choice to do what she wants, even if no one else agrees with it. But when other people have choices they want to make, she has the right to make those choices for them because she's Elena, and she does all of this with the veneer of selflessness. Elena's actions to some extent can be explained away due to the fact that she, for one, is a teenager, and teenagers famously aren't great at making decisions, and 2, is going through a lot and continues to go through a lot, and I don't think anyone would know how to handle situations like this. But there are certain things that just cannot be excused. Something I noticed while reading these posts is that even some of the Elena fans agree that even they started having issues with her, starting with seasons 4 through 6. And I would agree. I think Elena's behavior during season 4 is really fucking gross. At the end of season 3, Elena died with vampire blood in her system, which in this show means you will come back to life as a vampire. Whose vampire blood? What is it though? Damon's. Because of this, when Elena turns, she becomes sire to Damon. Now, what the hell does that mean? A sire bond is the link between the sire and their sired that exists within the vampire and hybrid species. The sired complies with the direct and indirect orders of the sire in order to show its loyalty. It is mentioned for the first time in Smells Like Teen Spirit when Damon reveals Tyler is sire to Klaus, and while he says that it is very rare in vampires, it is apparently not so rare in hybrids. This is what ultimately leads to Damon and Elena finally sleeping together for the first time. And when they do, they try to keep it a secret from Stefan, who by now has learned of the sire bond between him and Elena. Elena is so happy about her relationship with Damon that she invites the girls over for a girls' night. Caroline isn't too happy to learn that Elena and Damon have gotten closer.
So you guys check in text now? What else do you do? Know that you're not the biggest fan, but it kind of just changed my life. Would you mind laying off on all the hate?
Caroline vows to stop being judgmental. And then an infuriating scene takes place. Caroline slut-shames Damon, and then Elena says,
What exactly was it about him that made you jump right into bed with him as soon as you met him?
I didn't know what a sociopathic narcissist he was.
Elena says, well, he's always been there for me. And Caroline says maybe he's hoping you'll sleep with him. And Elena's like,
Well, maybe I did.
You did what?
You didn't. Look, I know you two have issues with him, but I'm happy. And I wanted to spend tonight with my best friends so that I could tell them about it.
Caroline tries to tell Elena that she is sire to Damon, but she doesn't want to hear it. After some people come and attack them or whatever, Elena ends up saving Caroline's life.
If you really want to hit Klaus where it hurts, then torture me instead. He's fixated on keeping me alive. You want real revenge or not?
And because of this, Caroline apologized to Elena at the end of the episode.
I'm a jerk. I promise to never again judge ever.
Just please don't tell Stefan about me and Damon.
You saved my life in spite of me being the nasty bad witch.
Do y'all see what I mean? Elena does something objectively horrible and then she martyrs herself for her loved ones and then all is forgotten. But what exactly is Caroline so judgy about and why does she hate Damon so much? Well, in the first episode of season 1, Caroline caught the eye of Damon at the grill and then ran into him again outside the grill by her car in the second episode. She took him home and while having sex, he attacked her. The next morning, she woke up next to him, seeing the bite on her neck. She tried to sneak out, but he caught her, threw her on the bed, and proceeded to feed on her again. We later see that she and Damon are in a relationship, and that Damon has compelled her to be his submissive plaything that he can use and abuse. While at the Founders Ball, Caroline literally hides her bruises as if she is an abused wife. Elena happens to see one of these bite marks and is shocked and disturbed.
Don't.
Oh my god, Caroline, what happened?
Nothing, okay?
That is not nothing. Did somebody hurt you?
No.
Rightfully, she confronts Damon and tells him to stay away from her. She goes to tell Stefan, and he says he's handling it. At the end, after Damon attacks Caroline again, this time with the intention of killing her because he blames her for Elena finding out.
I am so over you now.
Elena finds Caroline after she comes to, and she completely breaks down in tears.
I'm fine.
Caroline, what happened?
I'm fine.
Maybe I'm not supposed to take this show seriously, but that's pretty serious and that's pretty fucking awful. Damon did her dirty, okay? Dirty. And yes, Caroline is able to enact some revenge on him when she becomes a vampire after she remembers all the things he did to her.
I remember how you manipulated me. You pushed me around, abused me.
Wait.
You suck.
Because that's the other thing. Caroline didn't even know how fucked up her relationship with Damon was until she became a vampire, because when you become a vampire, you remember all the things people compelled you to do. Elena didn't even fucking tell her when she knew after getting back with Stefan. Like, it's weird that she was understandably pissed off at first about how Damon treated her, but then just forgot about that because he took her on a road trip to Atlanta. This Atlanta trip is also after Damon almost very recently killed her other bestie, Bonnie, who was literally possessed by her ancestor Emily and had destroyed a necklace Damon needed to get Catherine out of the tomb he thought she was in. So he did that to her when it wasn't even her fault. So for Elena to brush off their problems with Damon as if they are trivial is so fucking cruel. Like, I can't imagine going through what Caroline and Bonnie went through and having your best friend tell you that it doesn't matter because I'm in love with him, and that's more important than your trauma. Now, I'm sure Elena fans will argue that Elena was under the sire bond during this moment, and part of the sire bond is being extremely loyal. We saw this with Tyler and the way he acted towards Klaus after Klaus turned him into a hybrid. And I was ready to use that as a defense, except there is no point in the show where Elena or the writers ever truly acknowledge the gravity of what Damon did to Caroline or Bonnie. Lest we forget, she was a teenager, and he assaulted her and then forced her into a disgusting relationship where he used her as a human blood bag and then tried to kill her because her friend was rightfully angry when she found out about it. And yes, I know Damon is supposed to be the villain here. Stefan calls him out for mistreating Caroline even.
They are people, Damon. She's not a puppet. She doesn't exist for your amusement, for you to feed on whenever you want to.
So the writers were somewhat aware of how terrible this was, only for it to happen again in season 2, where he does the same thing to a news reporter named Andy.
I'm bad, Andy. I do things. I kill people. Don't be afraid. You're okay.
Andy serves as Damon's distraction from Elena. He also abuses Andy, and when Stefan kills her in season 3, the show for some reason tried to convince us that Damon actually cared about her. It was weird. Now again, Damon is supposed to be an anti-hero. I've seen The Sopranos. I don't have a problem with anti-heroes, so Damon being abusive towards women is fine, as long as we call it that. He never answers for it, though. Even in this extremely gross scene where Damon abuses Andy while she's in her underwear, ugh.
I'm upset. You know what happens when I'm upset.
But we're supposed to fucking feel bad for him in this scene. We're always supposed to feel sorry for Damon because he's in love with a woman he can't have, and because the woman he spent over a century searching for never even loved him. That is treated as a bigger tragedy than a person being abused, manipulated, and taken advantage of. Damon never really treats Caroline and Bonnie any better until like season 6, I want to say. Nor does he ever exhibit any signs of actual change, so why is Elena sitting here defending him? This is when we get into the real problem with Elena Gilbert. I don't think someone changing as a result of a relationship is inherently bad. Sometimes people enter your life and they can bring out a certain side of you that maybe even you didn't know existed before. But sometimes someone can bring out a side of you that isn't pleasant. You find yourself doing things you never did before and feeling shame for it. You find yourself making excuses for things you never would have before. We see this happen with Elena. But we start to see it even before they actually get together. Like I said before, in the first 10 episodes of the series, we see Damon tried to kill both of Elena's best friends. After this, when they all learn of the existence of vampires, they have this thing where Caroline and Bonnie will joke about Damon being a dick, and Elena will just smile and shake her head like, oh, that Damon of mine. From the start, the show didn't take what Damon did to them very seriously, and nor did Elena. How does that translate into being compassionate? How is that kind? And what does it say about a person who fucks a guy who murdered their little brother in front of them? I don't care that Jeremy came back to life. Damon didn't know he was wearing the Gilbert ring and later admitted that he didn't. He planned to kill him because Elena rejected him. What I find more insidious here, though, is why Elena forgives all these things. Elena never actually puts her foot down with Damon. The show never falls short of reminding us that there is literally nothing he can do that would ever make her leave him or turn on him. And because Damon is kind of a one-note character, the writers had to keep upping the ante on Damon's terribleness and upping the ante on Elena's forgiveness. And that's where we need to talk about season 5. Season 5 is one of the most perplexing seasons of the show. The writers begin doing something that I find to be really lazy and kind of insulting to its fans. They basically tried to force viewers to get on with Delena. This honestly started at the end of season 3 where they introduced this retcon where Elena apparently met Damon first, right before the accident with her parents. And Delena fans ate this shit up.
You as in Elena?
Elena, yeah, but like she loved Stefan so intense and so head over heels, and then so quickly switched to Damon, not quickly, but switched to Damon and doesn't seem to look back at all. And that's where I'm confused because I feel like your first love and a love that strong would never go away.
But remember, there was that whole thing. She felt like she met Stefan first and Stefan saved her. And yes, that's true, but once she was not compelled anymore, she remembered meeting Damon first, and she remembered all of that.
I don't know, not being mean, but it just didn't do much for me. Like, okay, he and Stefan met her basically around the same time then, like we thought before. How does that actually mean anything, though? What's weird is that before we see this retcon, Elena tells Damon on the phone after choosing Stefan that maybe if she'd met him first...
I mean, maybe if you and I had met first...
Again, bad writing. How would her meeting him first change anything? When she met Damon in season 1, he was hung up on Catherine and was going on a killing spree. He didn't even begin to show small signs of change until way after they actually started to become friends. So what was the actual purpose of this retcon? Speaking of having a purpose, season 5's purpose is to hammer into our heads how toxic their relationship is. So in the beginning, Elena meets a guy named Aaron Whitmore who knew her and Caroline's roommate who was killed. She is eager to get to know him when she learns that he is an orphan just like her, and is also possibly involved in some secret society that experiments on vampires. Damon was a part of these experiments. After he escaped, he decided to track down every Whitmore and kill them. Elena learns that he was still doing this when they finally got together during the summer. At the end of the episode, Elena says that she's not defending him, and Damon says,
I'm not defending your decision to kill Aaron's entire family.
So why are you still here? I'm bad, Elena. I am bad for you.
And she says,
because I love you, Damon. Because I chose you and because I stand by my choice.
I stand by my choice. Damon says, well, this time I'm choosing. And I'm choosing to let you go.
I'm choosing to relieve you of having to defend me for every awful thing I've ever done.
Stop. Elena says that of course she's going to feel sorry for him knowing he was tortured for years.
Stop defending me!
He says he refuses to change and that he can't, and that he refuses to change her. Now, if you've read a thing or two about a thing or two, you would recognize this as lampshading. The show is almost regurgitating the same points Delena fans made about this relationship during that time. See, we know that you know that we know that this relationship is toxic. So that makes it okay now, because at least now we know the writers are aware. Because this doesn't lead to Elena realizing that he's right and he isn't good for her. It is only written in to make their relationship seem more profound and deep than Stefan and Elena's relationship. Like in a couple episodes before this, a guy that Caroline liked named Jesse, who recently became a vampire and was experimented on by a professor, was killed by Elena in an attempt to save Damon. Caroline is upset because she liked him and feels remorse because she and Elena promised him earlier that they would help him readjust as a vampire. Now, to be fair, it was an intense situation and Jesse was feeding on him due to something the doctor injected him with, so I don't know if I fully agree with Caroline, but after this incident, Caroline says a few things to Elena that have always stuck with me.
I'm so sorry. Yeah, me too. Because the Elena that I used to know would have given Jesse a chance.
There's a scene later where she also remarks,
And I wouldn't have killed him if I could have done something. He was dangerous.
But Elena, when are you gonna figure out that the outside world is not nearly as dangerous as the person that you're inviting into your own bedroom?
Wow, why don't you tell me how you really feel?
This is when the show starts doing this nobody want to see us together but it don't matter no thing with Elena and Damon. Another lazy thing this season does is it introduces another excruciating retcon backstory of Elena and Stefan's doppelgangers being drawn together by the universe or some shit, suggesting that the only reason Stefan and Elena fell in love with each other was because they were meant to, which in turn is supposed to make her falling in love with Damon more authentic and romantic. They weren't supposed to be together, but they defied the odds. This is how the show attempts to convert Delena fans, by insulting them and essentially telling them that they were foolish for ever shipping them together in the first place. But shipping Damon and Elena, not foolish whatsoever. Towards the middle of season 5, Catherine, now human, takes control over Elena's body before her old body dies of old age. Now, because Catherine has always loved Stefan and still loves Stefan, she takes advantage of this opportunity to break up with Damon, even though they were already broken up, but whatever, bad writing. So Damon does what Damon do, which is go on a killing spree. He even kills Aaron Whitmore, ending the Whitmore bloodline. In one episode, during a Valentine's Day dance, he threatens Jeremy's life and kidnaps him so he can force Bonnie to perform some kind of spell to get some information that he needed. He does all this, and when Elena is brought back and Damon realizes his mistakes, he feels he must come clean to Elena about what he did. And he acts scared as if she's going to be done with him forever. Like, he acts like this every time, and it's like, dude, you know she's going to forgive you. At this point, you could just start telling her this shit over breakfast. During this scene, Damon says that Elena breaking his heart caused him to kill someone, and that's how much control she has over him. And she says,
And I'm still here. That's how much control you have over me.
He says that this is toxic.
We are in a toxic relationship, Elena. I just killed your friend, and you find someone else to blame.
The classic Elena says, oh, you want me to blame you? Okay, well, I do.
You screwed up, Damon. Again.
Thank you.
You put me in a position where I have to defend you again, where I have to bend my morals again, where I have to go against every single thing that I believe in again because I love you.
If you're in a relationship with someone that makes you do these things, you need to get out of that relationship. I've always deeply despised how this show tries to treat this as if it is so beautiful that an allegedly good woman who had morals and boundaries and standards lowered all of those things for a man. It would have been one thing if this was part of Elena's journey as a character, but it isn't. She doesn't have a journey, really. This isn't a bad relationship that Elena needs to grow out of and learn from. This is supposed to be the love of her life and her best love because of the toxicity. The toxicity is treated as intense passion. See, they're so in love that they can't keep their hands off each other even when they know this relationship is bad. Something I've always heard from Delena fans is that their relationship is special because Elena always sees the good in Damon, and that's a part of what makes her a good person. This point is brought up numerous times by Elena herself. She's always telling Damon that she sees the good in him, and this is a big part of why Damon's tough exterior begins to deteriorate a little. It's why Damon even cares to live up to her expectations when he feels like it. The show certainly wants us to believe that she is an amazing person because of this. I would argue that her constant forgiveness of Damon's actions, especially on behalf of other people, does not make her a good person in the slightest. It doesn't make someone a good person to constantly excuse and minimize the actions of an abuser. This is why I feel like it's important to talk about this. Yes, it's just a TV show, but it is a little troubling to me that people found this to be altruistic behavior. It's not. But the show loves to beat this untrue fact into our heads, so much so that Elena's forgiveness becomes not just a predictability, but a must. I remember listening to the AfterBuzz podcast religiously when they reviewed this show, and I remember during season 5 when Catherine took over Elena's body, one of the hosts saying that they couldn't wait for Elena to be brought back so that she and Damon could get back together. There was never a thought of, I wonder how Damon is going to redeem himself, or how can Elena get over something like this, or even, Damon definitely doesn't deserve her anymore after this. Nope. Like, it had become so commonplace at this point for Elena to just always take him back regardless that Delena fans didn't even sweat when Damon would go back to his old ways. And I think that's fascinating. However, just because people ship a bad relationship doesn't necessarily mean that they condone this type of relationship. If you just like the messiness and enjoy the sex scenes and you think Ian and Nina are hot together, I can understand that to a degree. And Ian and Nina did have good chemistry. I am mostly speaking to the people who honestly felt that Damon and Elena were couple goals. That's not to say that Stefan and Elena were, but at least Elena was able to date him and not feel like she was compromising her morals and part of herself by being with him. I've always wondered why. Why did the writers make this choice? Elena always describes her relationship with Damon as a form of consumption. He consumes me, she always says.
What is it that I want?
You want a love that consumes you. You want passion and adventure and even a little danger.
Now, from my eyes, I genuinely couldn't figure out what it was about Damon or what particular quality it was that made her give him an endless amount of chances. It seems like a lot of it is because he made her horny. Twice in season 5, Elena defends her defenses of Damon with "because I love you." And every argument they share ends with them having sex furiously. The passion, I can't handle it. Elena becomes so codependent on Damon that she can't fathom living without him. She can't fathom ever not forgiving him for something. But there are moments where it's not super clear as to why she wants to hold on to this relationship so badly. It doesn't seem like she knows what she's fighting for and is just trying to prove a point. In the season 5 finale, Damon and Bonnie die, and in season 6, we see are actually sent to some strange universe that takes place in the 1990s. Elena is so racked with grief, not over Bonnie, but over Damon, and starts taking witchy drugs to hallucinate him. Like, she doesn't even seem that fazed by Bonnie, who has been her best friend since she was a kid, possibly being dead. Elena is so completely beside herself that she asks Alaric, who has just returned to the show, to erase her lustful memories of Damon.
Missing Bonnie makes me sad, JR. Missing Damon makes me dangerous.
Missing Damon makes me dangerous. Okay. After our memory is swiped and Damon and Bonnie return, the show does this soapy romantic comedy thing where Damon spends most of the season trying to get Elena to remember him so they can be together. Oh, and because the show never actually portrayed Elena and Damon having a normal relationship, they retcon all these flashbacks of them going on dates. But what's funny is that we see how Elena forgetting she ever loved Damon made her happier. Like, I don't understand why the writers wrote this in. It's just so strange and bleak to imply that at the end of the day, the most important thing is that Elena is with Damon, even if her happiness must be compromised in order for that to happen.
I get that we had an amazing life together. And I know that I loved the fact that you were reckless, and it probably made me feel very free because I'm never going to be able to give you what you want. Because I just can't remember.
Elena!
Elena being with Damon completely changed her. Her entire personality became revolved around her relationship with him and her always having to defend her love for him to everyone else. I believe Damon even says in one season that he had to become better for her and she had to become worse for him. And yeah, I suppose the writers were consciously telling on themselves there. There's a moment in an AfterBuzz podcast review of the episode I was just talking about with Elena and Damon yelling about how toxic they are. And the hosts have a very interesting conversation about it.
It's kind of messed up, though, I will say. Like, if this was real life, and Elena was one of my best friends, I was like, I'd say, you have a dependency issue. You are addicted, and you need to quit.
Destructive.
Right.
A destructive
And they are well aware. They are well aware that this is very destructive.
Yeah, I just love them together so much, and I think that they're going to get through this.
He's worse for her than I think she is for him, but she's has her,
I don't think that.
too.
I don't think he's worse for her. I think it's about equal.
But what does he do? Does he give her a purpose, you think? Like, to fix him or like?
Yeah, I think that as a vampire, not as Elena as a human, but as a vampire, I don't think she'd be okay with who she is if she didn't have him.
Because she needs somebody who understands the bad side.
But there we go back to them being a destructive relationship. He enables her to let down her morals and be different, and encourages her that it's okay to be like bad every now and then.
But
That
he's
you
not
are now
saying
a
that.
vampire.
He's saying don't be
Elena
with me.
felt so insecure and was so upset about being a vampire, like literally on the verge of breaking, until Damon came in and was like, let me show you the ropes. You're cool this
because
way.
Stefan said, listen, we're going to have you feed only off animals. And Damon said that's not realistic.
But that's what human Elena would have wanted.
Yeah, but human Elena is no longer who she is. She's vampire Elena.
And human Elena didn't know. Like, I think that's the thing. Like, Caroline fed off humans. Caroline did bad things, but she got to a point where she could be Caroline again.
Via Stefan.
Via Stefan. Well, yeah, via Stefan.
Stefan worked for Caroline, but not for Elena.
Maybe that's a sign.
Yeah.
We're figuring it all out.
Oh my
Vampire
God.
Diaries. Yeah.
Diaries.
This is so funny because they don't even know what they're talking about, and Roxy especially doesn't. But like, she'll do this a lot when she talks about their relationship. She does this weird defensive thing where she's just like, well, that's how it's supposed to be. Elena's supposed to be different. And it's like, okay, let's go back for a second, because the real reason Stefan's animal blood approach didn't work for Elena is because she was sired to Damon, and he told her that animal blood wouldn't work for her. And so that's why when she drank animal blood, she would throw it up. It's also why blood bags didn't work for her. Because of what? The sire bond. Say it with me, the sire bond. Did y'all forget that part? I don't see how you could, since you're a Delena fan, and that was kind of a huge part of why they started dating in the first place. It's just weird. Like, she so desperately wants the reason Elena chose Damon when she became a vamp is because she just changed, and for the better, allegedly. And yes, she did change, but not of her own volition and not for the better.
Yeah, I was moved by that whole little scene right there, because I'm like, yes, because Stefan and Elena, like, if she was a human, this Elena would be happening. I had chills for that, just those little words between them.
If she was a human, she would have died and never could have been with Stefan.
But she was on her, but listen, he said, you made your choice and you were on your way back to Stefan, and I was like, yes.
But she's a vampire, that's the whole point. Like, they're talking about not living in the past. The whole point is she is a vampire. If she was a human, Stefan would have left in 3 years. She would have known he started to get more vampy.
So what is the reason what changed about Elena from being human to becoming a vampire that led her to Damon instead of to...
More carefree, she can't die, she can be a risk taker, she can be the full potential version of herself and have all these heightened feelings. Like,
You put me in a position where I have to defend you again, where I have to bend my morals again, where I have to go against every single thing that I believe in again.
I feel like the vampire version of yourself is just kind of like the enriched version of yourself. Mm-hmm. I don't want to say the word better, because for some people I think it pushes them over the edge, but for her I feel like she's a better version. Do you guys not feel that way about Elena? Vamp Elena versus human Elena?
Vamp Elena has been annoying me a lot lately, so I can't take that away. She's always been in a relationship. True. She's never just like single Elena. And I love Delena. I'm with you on the whole Delena thing, but I think maybe if she were single and away from this, maybe she wouldn't be as annoying, because I see her as just a needy, whiny person. Chair. Oh my gosh. That's my Elena.
That's actually your Elena impression.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I just feel like Elena's the best version of her vampy self when she's with Damon, which is why I love these scenes.
I mean, if the writers were smart, this could have been a thoughtful examination of the ways older male abusers can take advantage of young women and rob them of their agency and make them accept toxic behavior that they wouldn't have before. If this show were written by me, I would have Elena getting with Damon as a result of a downward spiral that she eventually has to climb out of and evolve from. Because at least then it would finally compute for me. Delena fans always tried to make it seem like Delena fans were just being haters because their ship had literally sailed. When in actuality, most SE fans hated their relationship because it was textbook abusive. And the writers completely glorified that and gave an insecure man baby who spends his entire life blaming women for his problems a happy ending.
In real life, we love people for reasons. You don't love people for no reason. There's kind of no such thing as unconditional love. Your love of someone and their love of you should absolutely have conditions. Like, for example, they can't murder your little brother. Elena's personality changes drastically when she becomes a vampire, and he tells Stefan, I like her either way. And I know for a fact that that moment when Damon tells Stefan, like, well, I love her either way, gets positive reviews. People like it. They view it as a sign that he loves her so much, that he loves her more than Stefan does, because he loves her no matter who she is or what she is. But again, what the fuck do you love then? Because all that really happens is she becomes like a worse person. I love her regardless of her personality. What the hell does that actually mean? I'll tell you what it means. It means that he loves that a Catherine bodysuit picked him, because he was desperately, in a very insecure way, obsessed with and latched on to Catherine. He drank people's blood before he ever became a vampire, and he didn't need to be compelled because he was so desperate to be picked by Catherine.
There was like a season of Buffy where Buffy started sleeping with Spike, a bad vampire, after she came back to life and wasn't really herself. Now, I wasn't into their relationship because of the way it started, but I did appreciate the fact that Buffy didn't fall in love with him at least. And she doesn't exist to make Spike a better man. The problem with Elena is the fact that you come to realize that her presence in the show is solely to serve Damon and his character development.
We have chemistry, of course, but that's a formula for divorce. A play about pieces of feces is what we are together.
There for you. Sometimes in ways better than I ever was.
He threatened my brother. Stefan, I can't go back to that.
Now, I could easily end the video here and just say, and that's the problem with Elena Gilbert. She's written to be this perfect person when in reality, she is just another abused victim of Damon Salvatore. However, that wouldn't be fair, because the problem with Elena isn't just a problem with Elena. It's a problem with Stefan and Damon. They are the heart of her problems. I have happily spent years complaining about how horrible the relationship between Damon and Elena is, not just because it's bad, but because it isn't even a well-written bad relationship. It's boring and repetitive and predictable. But Stefan and Elena weren't perfect. The story starts with Stefan coming back home and pretending to be a high school human so he can live a normal life. He begins a relationship with Elena and keeps his vampire secret away from her. But when Elena starts to become suspicious, he tells her,
I don't understand anything, Stefan. So why don't you just clear it up for me?
Look, there are things that you don't know, okay? Things that I want to tell you, but I can't, and I may never be able to.
That I may never be able to? Weird. So you were planning for this relationship to be built on a whole ass lie. Like, Elena's nosiness in the episode after this is kind of wild, but I don't blame her for being irritated with him. Of course, Stefan realizes this was wrong, and even after confessing to his best friend Lexi that he loves her, he thinks it would be best to just leave town and let her live a normal life. This was the correct decision, except that's not what happens. She begs him to stay and says she can handle it. And it wasn't until after this that Elena finds out that his ex Catherine looks exactly like her. Now, at the time, I don't remember how I felt exactly, but I hadn't really taken in the gravity of this. I'm trying to imagine how I would feel if I had just told my boyfriend that I loved him, and then we had passionate, loving sex, and then after that, I found out his ex is basically my twin. That would horrify me. And I know this is a show and this is supposed to happen, but that is so creepy. Stefan tells her later that the first day they met at school wasn't the first time. And then in fact, he was there when her parents' car went off the road on Wickory Bridge. He was the one who saved her. And as we heard in the clip earlier, he tells her once he saw she looked like Catherine, he watched her and then learned all he could about her and discovered she was adopted. Fucking weird. Stefan basically did a Rebecca Bunch on Elena, like moving back to the town she lives in so he can bump into her and then work his way into her life somehow. This is why the start of this relationship, while not the same as the sire bond, is still centered around men being inappropriate. In that episode where Elena finds out he's a vampire, Elena, terrified, goes to leave, and then he's like,
How did you do that?
Please don't be afraid of me.
What do you mean, don't be afraid of you? You were standing at the doorway and now you're standing at my car. Why wouldn't I be scared? Also, she said she wanted to leave. I don't like him trying to force her to listen to him. And then after she gets home, he shows up in her bedroom and then Stefan, why are you doing this? Now I have to compare you to Damon. God damn it. The Salvatore brothers are just really fucking creepy sometimes and don't understand boundaries. I will never forget this episode in season 3 where Damon comes to Elena's house to tell her Stefan is in Chicago with Klaus. The scene opens strongly.
How's you feeling, sleepyhead?
What are you doing?
Damon then starts going through her underwear drawer, pulls out a pair of red lace panties, and is like,
Put these in the yes pile.
ew. This show, which was largely written by women, has a lot of scenes like this, where Damon being a pervert is played as flirty banter between him and Elena. The writers thought it was cute that Damon would sort of force himself onto her, whether physically or by invading her personal space in some way. In this, Elena becomes more and more of an object. Going back to that scene between her and Stefan basically says the reason he came back and why he was intrigued by her is because she looks like Catherine. In that retcon flashback, we see that is also why Damon was initially intrigued by her as well. But something Stefan tells her to reassure her that he is not with her because she looks like Catherine is,
what am I to you? Who am I to you?
You are not Catherine. You are the opposite of everything that she was.
And from the beginning, Stefan always described Elena as nothing like Catherine.
Took my breath away. Elena, it's a dead ringer for Catherine.
She's not Catherine.
Every old vampire who knew Catherine seems to have the same impression of Elena when they meet her.
For the first 2-ish seasons, much of the fascination surrounding Elena is driven by the fact that she looks like Catherine Pierce. Obviously, the doppelganger mythology becomes more relevant later, but it's extremely telling and more than a little hilarious that what's supposed to make Elena so special and interesting to nearly every supernatural creature that's drawn to her is that she literally looks like someone else.
What was weird when I heard this YouTuber point this out was the fact that I hadn't really unpacked that aspect of the show in my head before. It's one of those moments where if you think about it too hard, it becomes really disturbing.
Think about it too hard, too hard. Don't think about it too hard, too hard.
We're supposed to think that the writers fell in love with Elena not because of her resemblance to Catherine, but because of her inner beauty. No, because her personality and her morality completely opposes Catherine's. Or allegedly opposes Catherine's, but not completely when you think about it. That's when you realize that this is probably why the writers didn't feel Elena needed to change in any way, or why she didn't need to have an interesting personality that could put her on the same level as Caroline, Rebecca, or Catherine. If Elena is the anti-Catherine and the only reason these men love her is because she's not as cold and manipulative as Catherine, why give her anything else, right? Once the love triangle went into full force, Elena stopped being a person and literally became an object of goodness that anyone would be lucky to win. Like when Elena kisses Damon at the end of season 2, we're supposed to think he's owed this kiss from her. He's finally realized the error of his old ways. He's feeling sorry for himself again.
I've made a lot of choices that have gotten me here. I deserve this. I deserve to die. I'm so sorry. I've done so many things to hurt you.
It's okay. I forgive you.
You should have met me in 1864. He would have liked me.
He's sorry for being mad at Stefan, and so he has officially earned the holy lips of Elena Gilbert.
I like you now. Just the way you are.
And now he is a good person, because she said so. At the end of season 4, after breaking the sire bond, Elena tells Damon that she loves him. And Damon literally goes to Alaric and tells him that he got the girl.
I got the girl, man. I got the girl.
It's always rubbed me the wrong way. Even if this were coming out of Stefan's mouth, it would gross me out. Even though I was once a fan of Stefan and Elena and did believe Stefan when he told her he loved her, not because she looked like Catherine, at the end of the day, that will always be a part of their relationship, and it will always be an icky part of their relationship. Damon and Stefan go on about how they love her for who she is all day and night, but you can't look past the fact that both of these men were so beguiled by Catherine that they sought out a woman who looked exactly like her and then made the exact same mistakes. We talk a lot about Bonnie and how she was dealt such a shitty hand by the writers due to the extremely obvious favoritism toward Elena. I wonder if Julie Plec or some of the other writers will ever answer for that one day, because while the treatment of Elena was annoying and sexist, the treatment of Bonnie was downright cruel and fucking racist. For context, Bonnie is our witch character, and she starts to discover her powers in the beginning of season 4, learning how to make feathers float and light candles with her mind. Throughout the series, Bonnie hones her skills as a witch and becomes more and more powerful, but quickly realizes that with great power comes great nosebleeds. Every season, I'm pretty sure, ends with Bonnie doing some big spell that ends up taking a lot out of her and possibly killing her. And by possibly, I mean it does end up killing her at one point, and when she dies, Bonnie doesn't want to ruin her friends' lives with more grief, so she has Jeremy lie about her actually being away with her dad as she is an actual ghost. So from the start, Bonnie has actually always been written to be way more selfless, arguably to a fault, and way more compassionate and caring than Elena. But who got the shit end of the stick? Bon Bon. At best, they did a horrendous job of styling her. The god-awful fucking wigs they put on this woman's head is just like, why? Why? What is this? This is not acceptable. Why did they have to style it that way? And why does it look so sloppy? Jesus Christ. And at worst, Bonnie was never valued as much as the other white characters, but valued enough to only be worthy of being a savior. That means that she rarely ever had any romantic plot lines or any plot lines that centered around her family. We don't meet her mom until season 3, and she ended up being forced to turn into a vamp to save Elena as always.
But put yourself in her shoes. Everything that happened tonight was to save you.
Her dad is constantly mentioned in the show, but we don't meet him until season 4, and then he's murdered the very next season. She dated Jeremy briefly in season 2, and the writers really tried to make their relationship seem as epic as Delena or Stelena, but I don't think anyone gave a shit about them dating because Jeremy is also a shitty character, and they could have just, put her with someone else, like literally anyone else. Whenever Bonnie did have other crushes, those crushes would turn out to be villains who were using her, or they end up killed before she could even get to know them. While fans empathize with Elena because she is constantly suffering and grieving, people forget that she is not the only character who was a long sufferer on this show. But some TVD fans didn't seem to consider that because there were people who genuinely didn't like Bonnie because they felt she was mean, especially towards the brothers. Like at the end of season 1, there's this stupid Gilbert device that was magically spelled by Emily. The device is meant to elicit some sort of like dog whistle, but for vampires. Sheriff Forbes, Caroline's mom, and the council, this secret council thing where people investigate vampire crimes or whatever, had a plan to use it during the Mystic Falls Founders, whatever the fuck, who cares? Like, this show is always doing some Founders bullshit, I swear. Imagine a town being so obsessed with its own racist history that they built a parade float with teenagers dressed up as Confederate soldiers. Love to see it. Anyway, when Stefan, Damon, and Elena find out about this device, they ask Bonnie to put a spell on it to render it useless and then give it back to Elena's uncle/birth father who works for the council. Except Bonnie didn't put a spell on it, she only pretended to.
I pretended to do something I didn't really do. I couldn't do what she wanted me to do. It wasn't right. Grams would have never done it, so
when the device goes off as planned, the vampires are rounded up and brought to a basement where they are to be lit on fire. Damon ends up in the basement, and when Stefan goes to save him, Bonnie, feeling guilty about lying to Elena, helps Stefan save him. Bonnie later talks to Stefan about how she knows what she is capable of now, and tells him that if Damon kills one more person, she will take him down and...
even if I have to take you with him.
Oh, if only they had kept this same energy with her for the whole series. She had so much promise. Obviously, this is bullshit because in the next season, when Caroline turns, she kills the guy Bonnie had a crush on. Bonnie sees this and puts the blame on Damon and starts the process of ending Damon's life.
Bonnie, it wasn't his fault. Everything that happens is his fault, Elena.
Bonnie, stop it! Bonnie, stop it! Bonnie, stop it! You're gonna kill him!
Stop. Bad job. No.
And so Elena, of course, stops her and says,
Because this isn't us. Bonnie, this can't be us.
Why can't it be? He sucks. The writers of this show and some of the show's fans, or possibly many, could never actually fully empathize with Bonnie's situation, ever. The reason Bonnie was skeptical about helping the Salvatore bros is because 1, Damon almost killed her, and 2, they were all partially responsible for the death of her grandma. This was during the tomb plotline. Damon was searching for Catherine and had intel that she was in this tomb where a bunch of vamps in 1864 were stored after they were captured. The tomb needed to be opened by a witch. Or 2. So Elena somehow convinces Bonnie to help Damon because, none of this has anything to do with Elena or protecting her. It's about Damon. So Bonnie is being made to help someone who just tried to kill her. I know I keep harping on that, but it doesn't make any sense. It makes no sense why she would ever even consider helping him, or how Elena could fix her mouth to ask her that. Anywho, Bonnie and Grams are able to open the door and Damon makes Elena come in with him as leverage. Except Damon is an idiot because Elena's human and she can leave whenever she wants. Damon can't.
Opening the door didn't remove the seal, it just open the door. This one keeps them from coming out.
You were never planning on breaking the spell, were you?
I told you, I will protect my own.
So I guess because Grams did this, knowing Damon would get stuck inside, she somehow deserves to die now because of that. Because when Bonnie convinces Grams to help her get the brothers out, they do the spell, which is a huge spell that takes way too much out of poor Grams, and she dies in her sleep in one of the saddest scenes in TVD, in my opinion. I'm still mad about it. Because of this, Bonnie feels uncomfortable being around Elena and the brothers. Duh. But Bonnie is not allowed to hold a grudge. She's not allowed to be rightfully angry about anything, so she has to do the right thing in the end, which is put herself in danger to save other people who don't give a fuck about her. Bonnie and Damon do eventually develop a friendship when they get trapped in 1994 in season 6, and for once it does seem like Damon started to care about someone else other than himself and Elena.
She's the reason I survived. The reason I made it out. Who knew? Turns out you spend time with someone and don't kill them, you actually become friends. I'm doing this for Bonnie, Elena. Not for you.
When he is able to get out because Bonnie once again martyrs herself with this piece of shit, he spends the first half of the season trying to look for Bonnie. Which is great, except we also have to watch Bonnie being tortured almost to death by a siphoner vampire hybrid named Kai, who was trapped there by his father in 1994. Kai is able to get out and leaves Bonnie there alone, which obviously causes her to sink into a deep depression, and she almost unalives herself before Elena, Jeremy, and Damon are able to stop her. When Kai is released and Bonnie is finally able to get out, he finds out and he tells Damon that he feels really, really bad, you guys.
Well, ever since you told me Bonnie was back, I can't stop thinking about her. I need to see her. I need to apologize. And you're gonna make that happen.
So what do you think Damon's gonna do? Tell him to get fucked and that it's never gonna happen? Of course not. That's what a good friend would do.
Don't freak out, but... Hi.
Just get this over with.
I wanted to apologize.
If I see your face again, I will melt it off.
Imagine that going a little differently.
I fucking hate this scene. Damon is supposed to have grown. Why the fucking fuck did you actually think this was a cool thing to do to your friend? Thankfully, when Damon goes to talk to Bonnie about this, she realizes that the only way to make these selfish fucks understand her pain is by putting them through what she went through.
This is about my mom. Kai knows a lot of stuff about my mom.
I don't care. I told you I didn't want to see him again, and you did it anyway.
I know, but Bonnie...
Was I unclear?
I get that he hurt you.
I said listen. I want you to feel what I felt. But you weren't there for what happened next. When he chased me through the hospital, when he strangled me, he drugged me, he tied me up, and he stuck me in a trunk. Because when it was all over, he left me alone. And I wish I could show you what that feels like.
I remember listening to the AfterBuzz podcast on this when this episode came out, and only one host was able to understand why Bonnie was right for what she did.
She said to Damon, she's like, I wish I could show you and make you understand how it felt to be left alone.
Yeah. Well, I had a little bit of a problem with that scene. No matter how much pain you as an individual have ever been through, you never should want to inflict that kind of pain on somebody you love. And yes, he inflicted pain on her tonight by bringing Kai back, but he wasn't doing it because he wanted to. He was doing it because he was being forced to, kind of. I'm about to put you in pain so you know how I felt. That's messed up.
I don't agree with that either. I don't think she should have shown him physically what it felt like.
I don't know. I kind of feel like in a way, she had a right to do what she did to Damon, just because no one's ever going to know how she feels and understand why she doesn't want to hear from Kai unless they can put themselves in her shoes. And Damon is so focused on wanting answers about his mom that he really didn't think it through. And he kind of put their friendship test to the line tonight by, she said, I don't want to see him. I don't want to even hear his name again. And then you brought him to her. That is like, if you're my friend, you don't do that when I say I don't want to do that.
I should have asked her over the phone. Yes, she might have said no because of what she said to him. Basically, don't say his name again. But he should have at least given her a heads up about it instead of just, oh, hey, here he is.
Of course, what he did was selfish. Of course, it's definitely selfish. But I don't know if I would have done something different.
I'm going to try and use an analogy.
Okay.
I believe that what Damon is doing to Bonnie and going to her with, this whole Kai stuff is equivalent to that of someone who was, I don't know, someone whose parents were murdered by this person, and now you're having the murderer wants to apologize to you. If I'm not there
like
and
the
ready,
person who killed Bruce Wayne's parents,
is now the next day in Bruce Wayne's mind is now saying, I want to talk to you. I want nothing to do with you. I want you murdered. And as my friend, I need you to understand the level of hatred that I have for this person.
Why did she have to use an analogy to make y'all understand that? This is how this show just warps your brain sometimes, because for some reason people who dislike Bonnie felt that she should always be willing to sacrifice herself, and if she dare not want to, people would criticize her and make her out to be this selfish asshole when she's the most selfless character on the show. But she's also the most passive. Like Elena, they try to paint her with the veneer of strength. She'll have these badass lines and do her classic Bonnie face, but then she'll continue to let these vampires use her, manipulate her, and pressure her into doing things that put her own life at great risk. No matter how many times she tries to stand up for herself, she always ends up helping them in the end. But once again, the show is self-aware to some extent. Bonnie has a few encounters with other black witches who warn her to stay away from vampires. Her Grams warns her, a black witch that she meets in season 2 tells her that she's done letting vamps push her around.
Seeing you tonight was a wake-up call for me. Gotta stop letting vampires control me.
Bonnie tells her she doesn't want to be in their bullshit either, but she tells her,
how do I stay out of it? Unlike me, you're one of the good ones, Bonnie. The middle of it is exactly where you need to be.
So not being used by vampires makes you a bad person. Wow. Bonnie was not worthy of sympathy in the way Elena was. Her anger could never be justified in the way hers was. Elena got to shut off her humanity and become a somehow bigger bitch than Catherine. Bonnie never really gets that opportunity. Damon and Bonnie's friendship continues to develop over the last 2 seasons, but only because Nina Dobrev left the show and Elena was stowed away in a coffin. So Elena had to physically leave for the writers to finally give Bonnie a romantic relationship that lasted longer than 2 minutes. And he still ended up being killed in the end because Bonnie is not allowed to be happy. But you know who is allowed to have a happy ending? Elena. Or let's be honest, Damon. Because Damon is the only one who actually wins in this situation. The show was clearly more devoted to giving Damon in particular a happy ending when he is, in my opinion, the one character who absolutely doesn't deserve what he gets in the end. Y'all can call Stefan boring all you want, but he also did a lot of bad shit throughout his life. He was a serial killer who would feed on people so viciously that their heads would fall off. He would tear people apart and then put their bodies back together. Stefan was not that much different from Damon in that regard, and in some cases was worse. But unlike Damon, Stefan actually has way more redeeming qualities and constantly shows his capacity to change and learn from his mistakes numerous times throughout the show. But he was not one of the favorites. So not only does his character get assassinated multiple times after his breakup with Delena, he also has to die in the end. And what's really unfortunate is that I think Damon had the potential to be a great character. But the writers became, in my opinion, way too fixated on making the relationship between Damon and Elena make sense, that it came at the cost of all of their characters' progression and the overall vibe of the show.
There's a reason why people love Damon's storyline with Bonnie so much in season 6. That's because it's the only time in the entire show that he gets to do something different. And it's also the only time his character is allowed to exist outside of Elena. And Ian Somerhalder himself said it was a blessing to get that storyline to change things up.
Bonnie is somebody else on the show.
Damon's heart? Yeah, I'm really surprised that Damon and Bonnie didn't have some huge affair. Because if you think about it, it would have caused, because her and Elena were best friends, it would have caused all sorts of great drama and shit. Could have been a great little love triangle. I never understood that.
The Vampire Diaries leaves a weird legacy. On the one hand, it's honestly a fun show to binge. It's compelling and engaging, but it's also a show that centers around female characters who aren't as strong and confident as the writers think they are. They are constantly suffering and are continually put in relationships with men who have done absolutely horrible things to them. These men, who often suck, are presented as these life rafts for the women characters. Caroline acting like she's going to die without Stefan in season 6 because he left town after thinking his brother was dead was so strange to watch. They turned her back into an insecure mess because of a guy. And then her mom dies and she turns off her humanity because Stefan didn't just tell her he wanted to be with her at her mom's funeral. Elena being completely beside herself after thinking Damon died when this should have been a fucking relief for her to get out of this awful relationship that was negatively impacting her mental health. While this could have been written with more self-awareness and less romanticization, and maybe more college students and less teenage girls, unhealthy relationship dynamics are at the epicenter of this show. Women being forgiving and self-sacrificing, Black women being used, manipulated, and put in roles of service is also a huge part of it, and you can't really disentangle that from the show's legacy. It will always be stained to some degree because of that. Thank you guys for watching. Hope you made it to the end. I know this was a long one, but I do plan on making more long-form TV reviews. I'm currently working on a video for 90210, so look out for that this summer, hopefully. See you all in the next one.
I wasn't really listening, but I can see the center of the triangle is little old me.